Enough is enough. Hey, beautiful people. Today we're going to be talking about Mr. Rogers. And you might be thinking, why are you making a video about Mr. Rogers? I'm making a video about Mr. Rogers because there's a disturbing trend amongst transphobes claiming that Mr. Rogers was like them. No, he was not. Now, I gave this video a lot of thought because on one hand, it's weird to discuss what a deceased person may have thought. But on the other hand, I think it's more wrong that people are using his image and likeness to spread hate. Am I saying he was a trans ally? No. Instead, I'm saying he wouldn't be transphobic like these people make him out to be. For those of you who are unaware, Mr. Rogers was actually a minister who was on public television, educating primarily young children for 33 years. However, his legacy goes well beyond that. And this was a secular show. And I actually did watch this show as a child. My grandfather used to record them on tape and send them in the mail. Anyone remember tapes? Anyone remember the mail? So this hits close to home for me. And while he was not a perfect human, we'll get to that, his show often challenged prejudice, and his goal was to make young kids feel seen. Now, where does this idea come from that Mr. Rogers was transphobic? It comes from a song he would occasionally sing with words like this.
Boys are boys from the beginning. Girls are girls right from the start.
Now, if you're not trans, you might be thinking, oh, that's not good. But if you're trans, you're thinking, what exactly is the big deal? What seems to be going on here is these transphobes misinterpret, or more accurately, deliberately distort the fact that somehow trans people change genders, which isn't true. We were always the gender we say we are, unless you're gender fluid, but we don't have time for that conversation. But also, they're misinterpreting the very message of the song itself. And how about we just have Mr. Rogers explain it in his own words?
Because sometimes children think that they might change. They might have to change after a while. And, you know, we laugh about that now. But it's because we had that concern when we were little.
He's not making an assertion about biological reality like transphobes seem to think he is. No, instead he's talking about the child's feelings. That's what he was all about. In this same interview, he also talks about how he sings songs to kids about how they're not going to go down the bathtub.
Well, many children are concerned about going down the bathtub drain.
The purpose of this song was to help them feel more comfortable in themselves. Because some kids do have an irrational fear that they will turn into a different gender. And all he was trying to do was calm their nerves. That's all he was doing. While we don't know what Mr. Rogers' thoughts on trans people were, I imagine that he would have been thoughtful and empathetic enough to hear you out and recognize your struggles and recognize you for who you are and treat you with kindness. Because that's who he was. The only time I can actually find a conversation with him where the topic of trans people came up was in fact the interview I just showed, where Johnny Carson makes the following joke.
Yeah, because you're really not sure, and you thought maybe you'd become a girl, or the girl would become a boy, right?
Exactly.
And it happens frequently out here. Sometimes.
Now notice something in particular. They don't cut back to him. They don't show his reaction, and you don't hear his laugh, which is weird because earlier in the interview, he was shown laughing and engaging. Now, I don't know for sure what Mr. Rogers' reaction was in that moment. However, I think it's notable that they did cut away. Perhaps Mr. Rogers was rightfully uncomfortable about him making fun of marginalized people. Maybe that was the case, because Mr. Rogers was not about putting people down. He was about lifting people up. He was about love and sharing compassion with each other. Based on how the interview was cut, I suspect he didn't laugh at the joke. Now, he could have responded in that moment like, hey, that's not cool, but it was also the 80s and he was running a children's show. Probably not the best look for him, but we can also learn based on how he was treating gay people. Notably, Francois Clemens. Francois Clemens played Officer Clemens on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, and in a brilliant scene, he's shown sharing a pool and drying off his feet, showing compassion. That is symbolism, and especially at the time when people were throwing bleach into swimming pools because black people were swimming into it. It was a bold statement of everyone is welcome. Now, during this time, Francois Clemens was in the closet and was coming out to people. And he did eventually come out to Mr. Rogers. However, Mr. Rogers told him that he should get married to a woman to keep up appearances. Now, it was the 60s, and this was a children's show, so as bad of advice as that was, I get where he was coming from. Now, to be fair to Mr. Rogers, later he did admit his mistake and tried to make amends for it. After Francois Clemens was getting divorced from his wife, he realized it was time for him to just be gay out of the closet. And there's a famous moment from the show where Mr. Rogers said,
"We're all human beings, and I like you just the way you are."
And Francois Clemens was behind the camera when that was happening. And he was saying those words to him. And yes, he did clarify, yes, that was meant for you. And speaking of which, I don't believe anyone who could write "It's You I Like" would be transphobic. Seriously, I can't play it on here because it would probably get taken down for copyright. Go look it up. "It's You I Like" and tell me, would a transphobe write that song? I have a hard time believing that. And for a final note here, I want to talk to my trans viewers specifically. I know this is a hard time right now, given everything that's going on, but as Mr. Rogers said, look for the helpers. Look for the people fighting these horrible, horrible laws and executive orders. Look for the helpers, like the lawyers at the ACLU or Lambda Legal. And before I wrap up, I want to say thank you to my patrons, YouTube channel members, and TikTok subscribers. Without you, this video couldn't have been possible. And finally, remember, it's a beautiful day because you're here. See you next time. Goodbye.